So, in my last video, I made the point that Satan eventually will be ended by human intelligence or human awareness, understanding, wisdom, human beings gaining knowledge, overcoming the ignorance that allowed Satan to use their power, to be tricked into using their power, that allowed Satan to trick human beings into using the power, the innate power given to human beings who are created in the image of God, to use that power not for God's ends, but for Lucifer's jealous ends. Part of his ends or part of his goals is to always keep human beings down. He acquired this goal when he saw that God had made a creature that skirted the entire hierarchy that angels were bound to and were able to come to God, to the bosom of God, cling to God, talk to God, bypassing the entire hierarchy. So Satan is essentially an entity primarily hierarchical, subscribing to hierarchical values. To Satan, promotion, position, praise for a job completed is the highest value that he has as a servant. He was a servant and messenger, and his value was related in the carrying out of tasks. And that is essentially the psychology of the angel. Now, angels who are good, ultimately good, kept their position, even though man seemed to be, the proposition of man seemed to be thumbing its nose. God seemed to be like skirting the hierarchy. And if you live and die by the hierarchy, you're offended by that. Okay, so at least we understand, at least that's the tip. I might come into talking about the psychology of the angel later. But at least you understand that meritocratic values can lead to rebellion against God, because God essentially is a father who wanted to create the world for his children. That is the proposition of Adam. And his children are not merit-based entities. They're not servants. They are not created in a matrix of hierarchy. They are created in equality. They are unique, each unique aspects of God's person that God takes joy in, or meant to take joy in, like a parent. You don't love your children more or less because of their performance. You may be pleased with them more or less because of their performance, but you don't love them more or less because of their performance. I could talk about the essential attribute of humans that actually allow God's joy to reach a higher level than if humans were just servants, thereby explaining why God created human beings. But in my last video, I said that mere intelligence alone will cause us to supersede the tempting and the tricking, or the trickology of Satan. That is incomplete. We also would need to have a relationship with God, because part of our motivation is not just intellectual. Part of the motive or the power to overcome Satan, not for God to overcome Satan, but for us to overcome Satan, is intellectual. The other part is passionate love for God and mankind. Passionate love for God and others. Make it so that we have an emotional stake in doing right by God and others. Doing right according to the ideal. It becomes an emotional thing, because the ideal of man is an emotion-filled proposition. It is a proposition that ends in the highest joy. So the sadness that joy might not come about if wrongdoing is done also gangs up on wrongdoing, gangs up on evil, and intellect and emotion in tandem tear down evil propositions. In order for us to be filled like this, we have to have formative experiences or education of heart within family. This is why Satan wants to destroy family, because family has the ability to make people who are emotionally, I can say, like, alive enough with good emotion to, have that my cup runneth over feeling that adds to wisdom and gives us the power to act against the prompting of Satan. So that was incomplete. Another thing that was incomplete about my last video, I simply said that intellect alone would do it. No, because as people get back to God, there are these meritocratic entities called pastors and preachers. That can get in the way, and historically do get in the way. You wouldn't have the spectacle of the story of Martin Luther if that wasn't true. Okay? Some interpretations of the Bible in Revelations, it talks about the Nicolaitans, that the Nicolaitans are hated by Jesus. It says so in the book of Revelations. But the Nicolaitans are people, according to some theories, that dominate the laity or dominate believers. Ultimately, pastors that dominate believers are those that feel threatened by succession, a brighter light coming into their church, one that the church needs to depend on more than the pastor himself. These kinds of things, these political urges or political resume being groomed or catered or curated by the pastor himself, are one of the reasons why pastors guide people wrongly at certain critical times. If the truth is not understood by the pastor himself, it might cause him, to lose the attention of the laity. This has also been seen in the Pharisees that handed Jesus over. So it's not just a matter of understanding like who Satan is. You have to fully understand like Satan's psychology and where that resonates with people that you would have an open heart to. You got to keep your eye on your own pastor, your so-called pastor. That's why so many Christians are post-church Christians, because pastors who act like the archangel acted, pastors who view their value based on their political standing and the attention that they get from so-called lower people in the church, and they curate their resume so as to maintain status. Those people can be tempted by the same psychology that tempted Lucifer into destroying God's plans, into using people's ignorance, using the ignorance of their flock, so-called flock, to block God. Because if God is doing something that supersedes the pastor's understanding, some pastors just can't have that. Just like Lucifer. And the last thing that I want to say kind of illustrates this. In the movie The Matrix was an allegory for fascist power, right? The machines are fascist. They have a corporate control over the minds and the reality of people. And people fight to escape that illusion and that control. But then they did so following a prophecy. But the prophecy in Matrix 2 was shown to be another form of control. Not unlike religion helps us escape evil, but then religion becomes a different kind of evil, or there are aspects within religion that tempt us back into forms of corruption. So unless we understand both systems, we're screwed and we repeat history. Therefore, while you may, as a new believer, need someone to coach and teach you the basics, without going to your own scripture, without corroborating assertions from scripture with science, without owning your own mind, you're part of the problem. You're sort of like an enabler, enabling a wrong strongman in our realm. Okay, pastors should not be strongmen. Pastors should not be intermediaries. Ultimately, they can be an intermediary at the level of coach when you're young, but as you get older, you must own your mind. You should turn a little side eye to pastors, and eventually, your goodness is not, to be verified or authorized by an intermediary like a pastor. You must own a conscience connection with God. Unless you press to that. I know Charlie Kirk, his assassination has made this revival, but let it not be a revival where we give pastors who may be instituting different types of control, systems of control, like the prophecy in the Matrix was a system of control, who may institute those things. Press on and find your connection with God. Watch out for your ego. Watch out for your physical desires. They will lie to you. They will warp your mind. So that is the essence of coming back to God, where religion does give you good coaching, but religious leaders can overlap with the spirit of the original break from God. And it's all due to meritocratic values being placed over family values. We were the children of God, not the servants of God. And our glory is not in service. It's not faith through works. It is the faith through the grace that he made us as his children and loved us regardless of what we do. Okay, he did not necessarily loving us because of what we do, but loved us regardless of what we do. That's what it means to be a child. All right, so talk to you.